My mother told me I lacked ambition for the first time at my wedding. She smiled when she said it, so everyone laughed. My wife, Emily, squeezed my hand under the table, and I pretended it didn't bother me. I was 31, working as a project manager for a construction company, paying our mortgage and building a quiet life with the woman I loved. I wasn't rich. I wasn't chasing some executive title. But I was dependable, and I thought that counted for something. Apparently, to my mother, it didn't. "You're capable of more, Daniel," she told me later that night. "Your brother understood that." My older brother, Ryan, was the family success story. He owned a growing real estate business, drove an expensive car, and always seemed to know exactly what he wanted. I never resented him for that. What I didn't know was that my mother had already started comparing me to him for another reason. For the first few years of my marriage, Emily and I were happy. We weren't perfect, but we were close. We cooked together, took weekend trips, and talked about having children someday. Ryan was around often because my mother invited him to everything. Birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners. Emily seemed to like having him around. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Then, around our 3rd year of marriage, little things started changing. Emily became protective of her phone. She would take it into the bathroom. She changed her password twice. If I walked into the room while she was texting, she'd turn the screen face down. When I asked her about it, she laughed. Work stuff. I believed her. My mother didn't help. Whenever Emily and I argued, Mom somehow found a way to blame me. "You work too much, but you don't have enough ambition. You should be more like Ryan. Emily deserves a man with bigger goals." I started questioning myself. Maybe I really wasn't doing enough. So I worked harder. I accepted overtime. I took additional projects. I came home exhausted and still tried to be present for Emily. And strangely, the more I tried to improve our marriage, the more distant she became. Ryan, meanwhile, seemed to appear everywhere. If Emily needed help moving something, Ryan was available. If she had a problem with her car, Ryan knew a mechanic. If I was working late, somehow Ryan was stopping by my mother's house at exactly the same time Emily happened to be there. I noticed the pattern. I just didn't understand it. One night, about 7 years into my marriage, I came home early from work. Emily wasn't expecting me. Neither was Ryan. His car was parked behind our house. When I walked inside, they were standing in the kitchen, talking. They separated quickly. "Ryan was just dropping something off," Emily said. Ryan nodded. I looked at both of them. Neither looked comfortable. But my mother called me before I could ask questions. "Daniel, don't start imagining things," she said when I mentioned Ryan had been there. I hadn't even told her what I was thinking. That bothered me more than anything. Still, I let it go. Years passed. Our marriage became colder. Then, 10 years after my wedding, I received a message from an unknown number while sitting in my office. It contained one sentence. "You deserve to know what your mother has been hiding from you." There was an attachment. I opened it. The first photograph showed Emily standing beside Ryan at a hotel. The second showed them holding hands. The third made my stomach drop. It was dated 9 years earlier. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Then another message appeared. "This has been going on for 10 years. Your mother knew from the beginning." I read it 3 times. 10 years. My entire marriage. I didn't call Emily. I didn't call Ryan. Instead, I drove to my mother's house. She opened the door, saw my face, and immediately stopped smiling. I held up my phone. "Tell me this isn't true." She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. Then she whispered something I will never forget. "Daniel, I did it because I knew Emily would leave you if she found someone better." I stared at her. She already did. My mother lowered her eyes. And for the first time in 10 years, I understood what she had really meant when she told me I lacked ambition. She hadn't wanted me to become better. She had wanted me to believe I wasn't good enough. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My mother's words kept replaying in my head. She hadn't been protecting me. She had been protecting them. I looked at the woman who had spent 10 years telling me I wasn't ambitious enough, successful enough, or impressive enough, and suddenly every insult made sense. "You knew," I said quietly. She nodded. "How long?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Since the beginning." 10 years. 10 years of lies. 10 years of my wife coming home after seeing my brother and pretending everything was normal. 10 years of my mother watching me question my own worth while knowing exactly why Emily was distant. I walked out without another word. That night, I didn't confront Emily. I didn't confront Ryan. Instead, I started collecting everything. The photographs. The messages. The dates. Bank records. Hotel receipts. Anything I could legally access that connected them. I wanted the truth, not another argument where everyone denied everything and somehow made me feel guilty for asking questions. 3 days later, I had enough. Then I discovered something even worse. Ryan hadn't just been sleeping with my wife. He had been telling her that I would never amount to anything. The same words my mother had used. They had been building the same story around me for years. I was the boring husband. The unambitious brother. The man who was supposedly lucky to have Emily. I almost laughed when I realized it. They had spent 10 years convincing me that I was the problem. But now I finally understood. I wasn't the problem. I was the person they needed to keep believing that story. So I stopped playing my part. I met with an attorney and quietly explained everything. Then I opened a separate bank account, reviewed our finances, and protected anything that was legally mine. I didn't empty joint accounts. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't destroy property. I simply stopped making decisions based on the assumption that my marriage was still what I thought it was. A week later, I asked Emily to meet me at a restaurant. She arrived irritated. "What's this about?" I slid a folder across the table. She opened it. The first photograph made her face go pale. Then another. Then another. Her hands began shaking. "Daniel." "How long?" She looked down. "I can explain." 10 years. She started crying. It wasn't supposed to happen. I almost smiled. 10 years isn't something that just happens. She reached for my hand. I moved mine away. Was Ryan better than me? She stared at me. "No." "Then why?" She couldn't answer. "Finally," she whispered, "because he made me feel wanted." That sentence hurt more than the photographs. Not because I believed her. Because for 10 years I had been trying to become the man everyone told me I wasn't. I stood up. "Then you should have left me." She cried harder. I was scared. "No," I said. "You were comfortable." That ended the conversation. The divorce was ugly. Ryan tried to convince me that what happened was complicated. My mother begged me not to destroy the family. But I had one answer for all of them. "You destroyed it 10 years ago." I didn't seek revenge by hurting them. I sought revenge by becoming impossible to manipulate. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped asking for approval. I accepted a promotion I'd been too afraid to pursue because Emily had always complained about the hours. I sold the small house I had once thought would grow old in after the divorce was settled. Then I bought a modest place of my own. For the first time in years, I woke up without wondering where my wife had been or whether my mother was judging me. Months later, I ran into Ryan at a coffee shop. He looked exhausted. His business was struggling, and Emily had left him too. Apparently, the relationship that had supposedly been worth destroying my marriage over wasn't so perfect after all. He looked at me and said, "Mom says you won't talk to her." "I don't." "She regrets everything." I nodded. "I'm sure she does." He looked down. "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. 10 years ago, I would have said yes. But that day, I realized something. Hating them would still give them space in my life. So I shook my head. "No. I just don't need either of you anymore." I walked outside and left him sitting there. My mother once told me I lacked ambition. She was wrong. I simply stopped wasting my ambition trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided they didn't deserve to see it. And that was the revenge none of them expected. I didn't destroy their lives. I built mine without them.